Jonathan Chandler coming to you from the Virginia School of Traditional Arts. We're going to give you a little walk around and talk to you a little bit about how these benches were made and where they're going. They're leaving tomorrow for the Woodlands, Texas. They have a, I think it's every year, art bench contests, and this year there was 4 benches that they wanted you to make, and I was lucky enough to be chosen to make 2 of them. And we have one that's looks like an old tree, and we have one here. I hope you think it looks like an airplane and some clouds. That's what I tried to get it to do. We're going to take a few minutes and talk to you about how they're made and what they're made out of. They're steel. These are hollow, but they've been welded all the way around all the sides. They're made up of multiple pieces. This is a piece, this is a piece, and then there's probably 3 pieces that make this little curve. And then down here, this is a piece. You know, this particular one probably has over 50 pieces in it. And the tree one has probably twice that. I'm Jonathan Chandler. It's been a while since I put a video on. We've been crazy busy. Been helping my father with hay this summer, so that's keeping us pretty busy. I also have 2 big art projects I'm working on. The one I've been working on first here is this one. I'll get you a close-up of this. But it's a bench. It's a park bench. Woodland, Texas has a open call once a year. They've been doing it for about 10 years, and people donate money to have benches produced by artists, and then artists come and install them and that kind of thing. Alright, as you can see, I have drawn this photo, or this drawing, bigger. This is an actual piece of steel that's separate from my table. My table's not quite wide enough for this bench. They're about 60 inches tall, or 60 inches wide rather, and 40 some inches tall, I forget exactly. But it has a tree stump and then a bunch of branches basically, and then this line represents the actual seat of the bench, and it's a specific height, about 17 inches thereabouts. So I've been working on this pretty diligently, and I've been using Schedule 40 metal plumbing pipe, and I'm going to show you what I have thus far. This is what I have so far. I've been following my lines more or less here on the table. It's always going to be slightly different than you draw, of course. Real life is not as easy as drawing, but I've kept the general theme. There'll be a few more branches this size here. This one needs ground again. But basically how this has been achieved is different diameters of plumbing pipe, and then each little bump that you see is a cut, 2 cuts and a grind and a weld, and then it's ground back off smooth, and that leaves some texture on it, which is what I'm after. A tree branch is not a piece of plumbing pipe. It's not perfectly round. Some of the pieces, like this piece, was actually formed using a pipe bender, a tubing bender, at least for parts of it. Like this part's fairly much used a bender to do that, so I didn't have to cut and weld this, but it's welded here and it's welded on down there, and of course at the ends. But that only works for the smaller pipes. These big ones, my bender, the one I have, is not robust enough, and I don't have time to build one that's tough enough to bend those big huge pipes. But I like the effect it's given me. It's given me bumps and lumps, and where I've ground is flats and here and there. And so when we paint this, it's I think gonna really pop out like it's really a tree branch. Some of the smaller ones I've done, this is solid. Most of these are pipe, but these pieces are solid bar. The bender works pretty good for that. And we've made it kind of weave in and out, trying to give it some 3-dimensional characteristics. This piece is actually bent up. It's going to catch the bottom of the seat, actually, the bench seat itself. It'll probably have another fork on the end of this. It's not quite tall enough to meet this line up here. and they'll have another fork coming out here with a fork on the end as well. This piece will come down and adjoin this second part here. So this will push down like that. The back itself will be tilted backwards, like at a 15-degree angle, so it'll actually tilt back. The seat will be, if this was laying down, the seat would be square with the table, and then the back would actually be through the table some. We haven't got that part yet. But I was just going to bring y'all up to speed on what we've been doing. I'll show you what I've been doing to make the pipes. You can see what I've done to make the pipes bend. I have a forge, of course, but if you just heat this pipe up and try to bend it, it collapses the front of it. Some people say you can fill them with sand, do all kind of different stuff, keep them happening. That seems time consuming and unnecessary. All I've done is cut some slices in here. Now I did cut one slice at an angle and one square to the pipe, just for expediency of time. And yes, you can heat this up and bend it, but I have found that if you cut halfway through or more of the pipe, this size pipe, this schedule 40, this is probably inch and a quarter pipe here. That's the inside diameter, inch and a quarter. Outside you're about an inch and a half. If you cut more than halfway through, then you can bend it cold. This is just a piece of rebar, and it fits in here nicely. And we can just bend this thing around. Until she shuts up here. All the way around. That one's not up to bend at all yet. There we go. So we can pull her all the way around like that. And that's give us our next bend. And what I do is I'll go through and I'll weld each one of these. And what I've been doing to weld pipe, probably lots of people can weld pipe a lot better than I can. I have a time following the line all the way around the pipe. So I'll lay it down flat and I'll weld a third of it all the way around here. Turn it over, weld the third on the other side, and then turn it up in the vise and weld the last third in the middle there, and then grind it off. But it gives you kind of that lumpy, bumpy kind of look that a tree branch would have naturally. And this is turned all the way around 180 degrees, which is what I was wanting for one of my pictures here. And I can come back down here. If it's bent too much, I can cut a slice in here a time or two and bend it back, and that'll give you the S curve, so that'll look like a tree branch too, instead of this straight kind of curve. Sorry about the noise. That's my forge heating up. I have this section cut and ground and welded to the base plate. The bottom grinds aren't good yet. And we have this piece roughed out. Have to grind on it. And we have to adjust our limb here so that it basically is parallel with this in the same plane. It leans back a little bit. I'm trying to do like 15 degrees. But it also has to miss the actual seat of the bend to be right here in the front. What I have in the forge is a piece of this pipe. I cut this with the plasma cutter. And what I'm going to do today with the forge, I'm going to heat it up, and I'm going to beat on this end and make it wider so it can match this base plate I have. And on the other end, I'm going to squish it down and make it a little bit smaller, and my hope is that it will curve it, kind of like these are curved, but without having to cut and weld. We'll see what that looks like. On our stump bench, we had our base plate cut out last time. I have spent the last little bit making these feet. Whenever I make a sculpture I put it on some kind of feet because inevitably we're going to put this on concrete. And so whenever you pour concrete, if you're ever pouring concrete, it's hard to get it perfectly flat. Hardly ever is. Almost guarantee it's not. So we put it on some feet. And I kind of made these feet kind of look like roots coming out, I guess is my idea. You know, and we may run the grinder on them or put some welds around the edges or something to make them look a little more like bark. And so what I'm doing tonight is we're making patterns. For the next parts. These have all been welded on, of course. These two are in the front. This is actually the front where I'm standing. This is the back. These two were actually like I think it was like a 4-inch piece of pipe, and I cut it off with my chop saw, and then I split the pipe down this way and heated up in the forge and just flattened out this side more or less, and then rounded this side, and then I had to come back and cut like I did all the other pipes, cut notches out, 2 notches on each one of these, and kind of give it that bend out. I was hoping by flattening this end and rounding this end it would do that bend all by itself, but it did not. So I ended up having to cut those and like I said, cut 2 notches out, heat it up and bend it down, and then weld it back together. So it's got that kind of tree shape here is what I was going for. And these are supposed to be like big branches or big stems coming off of the actual trunk is the plan. I've got those welded in good. I need to grind them a little bit. I got a few little extra hiccups on it, but got it pretty good. And then I've been taking a few minutes and I have been making patterns here it is, that I'll cut this out of 1/8 inch metal. All this other is probably 3/16. But we're cutting out cardboard patterns, and we'll put 1/8 inch, make these into 1/8 inch pieces, and then either heat them up or cold form them, whichever way we figure will do the easiest, and we'll bend them in here. And this is just a rough pattern to get you kind of the shape, and then you're going to have to go back and grind it and cut it and weld it and do whatever you got to do to make it fit. But the idea is to make it curve in all directions, just to follow the shape of the outline of the base here. We're going to have a V at the top, and eventually we'll come in and we'll have some little V pieces in here and make somewhat of a top on this. I don't know whether to make it all the way closed in top, because we're going to have a seat on top of this. Nobody's going to see that. You'll see it from the front and you'll see it from all the sides, but you won't see it from directly on top of it. You will probably from this angle, from behind it, you would be able to see into it. And I don't want to create us something here people are going to put trash in or do stupid stuff in. I did drill a couple of small holes in the bottom, weep holes. Inevitably when you weld something, or when I weld something that's not waterproof, there'll be a little tiny crack or here or there somewhere else, and when it rains it's going to put water inside this thing. Particularly if I try to cover this top up, I know that that's going to funnel some water. Even though I'll tilt it so I'm trying not to, it's inevitably going to do that. So I did put some weep holes in here. But that's what we're doing, and I'll just show you how I do that. And so this is our last part we have to do, and our cardboard is reeled this direction, and I chose that on purpose so we can do this and kind of manipulate the cardboard so that it will follow our curve. And this actually has a compound curve, so we're going to follow the curve loosely. When we draw it, when we cut our drawing, we'll leave it bigger because we're going to have to make it curve back. But we'll put one side up here and just reach it over and draw it over. And then this one's going to need to curve out a little bit like that. So I'm going to try to hold that. So that's our lines more or less. And when I cut this, I'll cut it a little bit bigger than that because we want to have extra on our metal, probably pretty close. And I want it to lean inward. I want this to be a slope. I don't know if y'all can see that on the camera, but to be a slope inward and have these sections kind of proud. Whenever I cut this out using the plasma cutter, I'll cut the metal even bigger than my pattern, and that gives me a little bit extra to play with. We got a few places here I need to grind and get us a little bit better transition there, but that's the idea. And then I've just been taking this original one, this is the front, and using it kind of as a pattern to kind of keep my V here similar looking. Try to center it a little bit. Just kind of keep my V more or less, something like that. And put that out too. Trying to cut this straight. I want to cut this as straight as I can. I tried making it arch, and I didn't like that, so I'm going to cut it straight. That'll make it, filling it in easier too, with our middle pieces. And like I said, these are just rough pieces. We can spend a lot of time on this. This one needs a little more on this corner, so I can put a plus on this side. So when I cut it out, I'll make a little bit extra on that. But that's the idea. So I've been using this largest of these three. Now then let's start on the far side. That's what we're getting. Something like that. And we test fit it, see what it's like. Some pretty good lumps in it. Alright. And this is what we've got. I'm trying to follow this bottom curve here as much as I can. And so we can scoop this in and out, try to get it to line up the best. I have a little bit of a hole here. That's not a problem. We'll fill that in with a little extra piece of metal. But I would like one side and part of the other one at least to be reasonably tight. So this side's forming up pretty easy. So we'll weld it in, and then we can beat it back around. If need to, we can knock this back around and put a clamp on it and mash it in. If we need to, we'll add a little strip of metal in there. But that's basically what I've been doing today. Rarely ever are you going to get it perfect unless you cut it big and then do this and then cut it again. I was trying not to cut so much. Spend so much time cutting and cleaning all that up. So we've got some scraps that we save special just to fill in little gaps like that. And also down here where I've welded this, sometimes I'll have to cut a corner off to get it past whatever weld is already there. But we'll take this up and weld it. But that's the idea, is we want it to look bumpy and lumpy, not smooth. We're not making a bowl, we're not making something pretty, we're making a tree stump, so it's supposed to be bumpy and lumpy. And I haven't decided 100% yet, but I'm thinking about putting me some weld pass on here and making it look like bark. Alright, just a little update. We got our stump looking pretty good. We've filled in the top. I was undecided whether I was going to fill the top in or just leave it a hollow stump, which would have looked good, I think, too. But I decided to go ahead and fill this in. I welded it down this little seam here, all but right in the very middle, because I don't want water to stand in this. I have drilled holes in the bottom so that any water that goes in should come out the bottom, no problem. Won't fill up with water, won't have a place for mosquitoes and such things, and it won't tear up my paint is what I was after. If we wanted a bird bath kind of thing, we could do that, but I didn't think that's what they wanted, and so I didn't want water to stand in this. And today we have, and I put texture on this since the last time you've seen this, I think. So what I did with the texture was I just turned my welder down and went really fast and put the little weld beads on it. Just kind of followed what I thought the bark would look like. I drew a few lines down here and I was able to follow those pretty good. And we filled in the tops of these and made the seat structure. This is the part where the seat boards will actually sit on, and it's all square. And we have these pieces today. We're going to add on the back. A little bit warm still. We're going to add these on the back side over here. Number one, to fill in the holes. Number two, we're going to use this TX.Tree, however you say it, plastic wood kind of stuff for decks. And it's not solid. It's got holes in the end of it, so you can see right in it. It looks kind of weird, and it's not even the same color. So I've opted to put a piece of metal on the end and let it stick up the thickness of the TX boards, however you say it. To cover up the ends basically, and to make it have a little bit more finished look. Here, I had planned on this to attach directly to here, but once I got the seat on it and the thickness of the seat and the thickness of the board, I started looking at it, and I wanted this limb to show above the seat. So I picked it up. It's probably, what, 6 inches, 5 inches higher there, and I'll just add another piece of this pipe on it and weld it at both sides. But going along pretty good. I got me some ropes hanging up here, but I didn't actually use them because I stuck this in here. It's sitting by itself, and I stuck this inside. That was the plan all along, to have this fall down in here. And so that it doesn't really need the ropes right now. Sometimes I'll use the ropes and twist them and see what it looks like. But I think it's looking pretty good. All right, we just got a little update. We've gotten our bench, all the major components built, and we've got them set up to where they're going to be. We've done some texturing. We've got very much texture on the branches, done with the welder. A couple of sections here we haven't textured because we still have to weld. We have to weld this branch, this branch, this branch, and this little branch down there. And as well as the great big branch up there isn't welded. All this is one separate piece that you've seen me make. The latest thing I've done is added this section on here and these two pieces in this section here. And that's to help brace this from somebody climbing on it. As we know what the public will do, that's to brace it so it's actually got some support, so people won't break it down climbing on it, bending it. It's heavy pipe, but you get a 200 or 300 pound dude on that end of it with no bracing, it will bend. You got a lot of leverage on it. But we have this pipe here continues down and around up to here, and this will be welded. This, of course, is the seat frame, and it will be welded down in here too. I haven't cut out the piece of steel for that yet, but it'll be some random shape, kind of make it look like either roots or mud or a rock or something. We'll make it look like something that's there. But it has two pieces here on the front of the bench. This one actually is on the front and then back towards the back with a limb, and those will all get welded to the bottom, of course. And we'll also weld along. We'll put a little piece of metal underneath each one of these when it ducks down below the bench, is touching the bench itself, the bench frame. And so we'll weld it along the top, and then we'll also put a little piece of metal underneath here and weld it so it has actual support from the bottom too. Update, we've got our bench welded together now. We've got our seat on. Took us about a day and a half. Well, I made the seat section no problem. But then we took some time to make sure it was level this way and level front to back. And we've added these limbs on here at the bottom to catch it. We welded it on the back here along these sections. We actually put a piece of steel between that front post and the back one here and here, and welded it all the way the length of that piece of steel on this end. So this end is rock solid. This end is rock solid too, but it's only welded here at the ends of these little branches, and then along the back here too as well. And we welded this plate down here at the bottom. That's going to be our anchor plate. That's going to anchor it to the concrete. And of course we have 4 holes on this end too, and 3 on this end. So if they're going to pull this up, they're going to have to work at it. But it's looking good. I think it's looking really good. We've got our first coat of primer on it today. That's what I've been working on. I went through and took about 4 or 5 hours this morning, and went over every inch of this thing, getting off all the little well spatter and all the little rust spots and just everything that comes along with metal. And felt on it all over, and if there was any little sharp edges or anything, I went ahead and took care of those. And we put our first coat of primer on today. To this point we're at 5 weeks. But I think this is looking really good. We're going to get some of this decking board from the big box store that's kind of plastic wood looking stuff. That's what was requested by Woodlands, Texas. And I bought some special screws that we can drill right through into the metal, right through the plastic board into the metal. And they have a big fat head on them so that they don't stick up hardly any, but they got a big head so it won't pull through the plastic. I've never used that. Trek, I think is what it's called. There's some other companies too, but I've never used it, so we'll see how that works. But we've set our dimensions up, so 1 16-foot board of that. It's 5.5 inches wide. Well, we cut 3 sections out of it and put it on here, so should work out well. But that'll be the last thing. We're going to put another coat of primer on it. We always double prime. This is rust preventing primer, and double prime it, make sure we got every little crack and surface primed, and then we're going to go through and we're going to put a base coat of brown on, and then we're going to start hand painting it. And that's not hard. It's nothing like grinding, but it's time consuming because you put a few colors on or a few spots on, and then you got to let that dry, and you come back. So I added a couple knot holes on this bench. I'll show you those when we walk around. But this bench you can sit on the end here and lean back on the main tree trunk. Of course you can slide down here and lean back there. All of it's meant to be more or less comfortable. It may not be flat, but it kind of fits your body. The seat is actually rocked back a little bit. The back is rocked back, same with the airplane, the Flight to the Sun bench. And this one is called the Windswept Oak, was the name we chose for it. And again, painted with oil-based paint. Should last a good long while. All the texture you're seeing on this bench is actually weld. I taught welding for a long time in Halifax County, and this texture was very familiar to me because this is what happens when you don't weld very well. And what I mean by not welding very well is the kids would go and cut the machine down too low and then go really fast, and this is what you get when you do that, which is this kind of bumpy texture. And so I used that information that I gained over my career of teaching, and we used that on this bench. First time I'd ever used it, but it turned out really well. It takes time, but it's doable. So in each one of these benches, this bench I have about 6 weeks in, and I hope y'all enjoy these. I hope they satisfy the wants and needs of the people that had chosen these plans. And I did them to the best of my ability, just like I drew them. And so I wanted it to look as much like a tree as I could get it. So that's why we chose to do that. And again, Jonathan Chandler, thank you so much for having me. Love to work with you again.